Hey, we are starting a brand new podcast today. This one is called Gospel Stories. And so the idea behind this is we as a church, as the town church, we want to share stories of how God has worked in people's lives to either bring them to himself or other things that God has brought people through. What we really want to do is showcase all the different ways that God has worked to save people and to work in their lives, so we don't have this tunnel vision that it must be one particular way, but it's all kinds of ways in our church. And so my hope is to share a couple of these a month, and I'm going to start by some different leaders in the church, invite them on to share their story of how God has worked in their life. And I think we're going to see it's different person to person, but still all God working. So my guest this morning is Mr. Justin Nevins. Justin directs our worship here, our musical worship at least. And thanks for joining me, Justin. I appreciate you being kind of a guinea pig on this.
Yeah, sure. Always excited to be a guinea pig.
I'm going to take advantage of that maybe in other ways then too.
All right. Well,
I need a lot of guinea pigging.
I take that back.
Yeah. Justin, but before I ask you a couple questions and we get into this, I'm thinking about this on the fly. Usually do this ahead of time, but I want to know an answer to a question that just help us get to know your personality maybe a little bit. So you're a pretty self-aware person in general. So I think I'm going to ask this question. What is something about your personality that is different than maybe most other people? What might set you apart a little bit as Justin Nevins than just an American or somebody who lives in Fort Collins?
Well, that is a fantastic question.
And I gave you no time to think about it.
It's good. It's good. I'm sure there are lots of things that differentiate me or make me unique. Although I think it's probably more the combination of lots of things rather than one big thing. But the thing that comes to mind for me is I kind of am what I would call a holistic thinker.
Okay.
I just see everything as interconnected. It doesn't mean that like I'm paranoid or I'm taking strings and attaching them across the room on a map. But I do love to look at the world and all the things in it and just try to. It's kind of wait and see and look and say, well, what's God doing here? What's connected? What am I not seeing? So I guess part of that's curiosity, but part of it's just kind of a holistic view of everything.
Yeah, I like it. So that's a little bit of Justin, but we're about to learn a lot more about you. I want to start here. Justin, could you share with us how God saved you? What were some of those pieces in it? Even, I don't know if this seems silly or not, but even just some of the practical, just what concrete things did God do? If you have a sense of that, like who did he use? Did he use somebody? Was it a particular moment or was it more of a process? Was it how old, how young, those sorts of things? And then maybe if you have a sense, depending on how old or young you were, what maybe some of those heart pieces were that might have been involved. So big question, how did God save you, Justin?
Yeah, so my story's interesting in that I got saved pretty young. I was 13 when I got saved, but I grew up in an Air Force family. My dad moved us around a lot when I was younger. So grew up in eastern New Mexico, but ended up spending quite a bit of time in the UK for a while, and then back to eastern New Mexico to a different town, and spent in between there living in kind of a bed and breakfast for a little while and some base housing.
Bed and breakfast? How long?
That was probably about 6 months.
Okay.
When we first moved to England, I was probably about 7. And so we moved quite a bit, and I was just I got pretty used to having to make friends and always feeling like things were temporary. And that was normal because we lived in towns that were either close to military bases or on the base themselves for periods. And you were just used to, like, the friends you meet, you get to be friends for 3 years, and then they're gone.
That sounds hard. I would hate that. I know you didn't have a choice, but that'd be so hard.
But it was so normal. At that point, it was really normal. And so in some ways, it makes you have to go deep fast. And that was kind of how our family was. And so my mom was really, really good at being social and making people feel welcome. And so she would instantly make, 20 friends anywhere we go. And I was not that way. But anyway, I guess that was to kind of tee up the fact that I had periods in my life where certain things came to light. When I was in England, my dad was in the first Gulf War, and he was gone for 6 months. And during that period, it was like all of a sudden, my mom would say that I was very disruptive. I got in a lot of trouble in class. I was mad about everything. I think it was just I was missing the stability of my father being around. And so I think I became or got some patterns of anger that were probably present before that, but I just went deeper into them. And so I found myself very easily set off by different things. So that was kind of, that was the start of it, or at least maybe the start of my awareness of it. I think others probably saw it in me even at a younger age. But as I grew up and we moved back to the States, I still had that issue of anger. And I had a little brother who liked to push my buttons and liked to take advantage of the fact that he could make me angry, I think. Make me angry. That's another phrase that's kind of interesting because I think I've since learned that that no one makes you angry. You make yourself anger, or you react in anger. You make yourself angry in response to what other people do. And so, anyway, that to say, when I was in, I was probably 12 years old. I was in New Mexico in a little town there, and I had a friend who. He was a fairly close friend, but invited me all the time to go with him to this youth group. And I was kind of like, it sounds fun. Maybe I'll go. And then he kept pressing, and he offered to take me, and he offered to pick me up. And it was like, okay. So, and his family was a Christian family, and
So your family must not have been.
Well, so that's interesting because I mean, my mother was raised in a house that would have said they were Christian.
Okay.
My father as well. But I don't know that it was ever. It was more culturally religious
I got you.
than it was a real faith. So we went to church at times. Had periods where we were real consistent, even. But I just didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know anything about Christ. So I ended up being invited to this youth group, and I started going. And I would go. Then I was like, I really like this, so I would go every week. And had just a fantastic time. Got to know a lot of the people, youth director, and started going to Sunday school on Sunday mornings. Before it was at a little Baptist church, and started going on Sundays to the worship time. And I remember just one time very clearly hearing the gospel and okay, this clicked into place. I need Jesus. And I was very aware of it because I was constantly struggling with anger, and I would just, I'd blow up at the drop of a hat. And so it was this experience of being fully aware of my sin and fully aware of the ways that I'd hurt other people and going, oh, Lord, I need you. And I don't think I had a very well-developed theology.
Yeah.
In hearing that, all I knew was, okay, Jesus, I need someone who can actually take this burden from me, who can do something about the things I can't do anything about myself.
Was it kind of in a moment when a lot of that, I don't know what better word to use than clarity, came about, or is that hard to distinguish?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a growing sense of understanding over years, I would say, after that point. Mm-hmm. So initially, it was kind of the basic, I'm a sinner and I need a savior, and Jesus is that savior. And so I'll trust in him, and he'll save me. But I still had all the baggage of, a very kind of legalistic mindset in my culture being brought up, and wasn't really sure that I don't know that at that time I really got the full picture of the grace of God. And so over the years, it was a progressive revelation in that regard, because in high school, I had times where I was just trying to be the good kid. I was trying really hard I really do believe it was to honor God. But I was also spending this time, I would be in sin in various ways in my private life, and then I would be saying, trying to rally the troops in a youth group, and trying to be, witnesses on campus and be the light, but I didn't have an understanding of the grace of God and my need, maybe the depth of my need for Christ. It was like, okay, I need him in the beginning, and now I have to go do and be right and do all the right things.
So when this greater clarity came, you said, I'm a sinner. I know I need Jesus. I might not know a whole lot more than that at this point. That was through the ministry of a local church. It wasn't a particular individual. It wasn't something else. It was through the ministry of the local church.
No, it was through a very faithful preacher. I think he may have passed away not long after that. But he was kind of fiery. He was a Baptist minister, but he was serious about the gospel, and he was consistent about preaching it. And then actually his replacement that came in, I tried to be a part of that church for a long time, and he was very legalistic. And I recognized like there was something different that I didn't like. And I had, I think I had long hair. My hair was starting to grow out during that period. And I was kind of looked at as like, oh, you're the trouble kid. And
just look at his hair, you can tell.
Yeah, all that hair. And dressing, I dressed a little, I don't know. I don't even know how I dressed. It was probably ridiculous.
So there's more to this story, because you said that you struggled with anger a lot, and that was you would blow up frequently. I do not know that as a piece of your personality today at all, unless you hide it really, really well. So it sounds like God has been doing some more work.
Oh, definitely. And that work has been over decades rather than, it was not a amazing transformation in that moment. Though there was a big difference. And I would say that difference really had to do with recognizing first that there was grace. And second, that there was help. And I think combined with even just a realization, I knew it was sin. I knew like the way I was acting in anger was sin, but I didn't have a full picture of like there are all sorts of things mixed up in this. Like there's a way to be righteously angry. There's a way to be, let me say that again. There's a way to be righteously angry. Not that I was doing that a lot, but at the same time, like normally it's a mix. Like someone has sinned against you, and now you're angry, but then you sin against them in response. And that was normally my pattern. So I think coming to grips with knowing that it was sin, knowing that I had this sin issue, I'm trying to think if there's the progressive realization of my sin in anger was also a progressive dealing with, working with God and him working in me to help me kind of figure out what's behind that. In some ways, it wasn't like a miraculous, the Holy Spirit comes and changes this part of your life, but he made me care about it. He made me care about changing it. He made me care about engaging in it. And yeah, I don't know if that's the right way to say it. But.
So that's a process. Was it a process over months, years? Many years?
Yeah. Many years. But it started right away. I mean, I think I went from a place of just wanting to hurt my brother or wanting to be violent to recognizing, oh, that's a line you don't want to cross. It's not Christ-like. And so I would be angry, and I would immediately, it was almost like I was embarrassed of my anger, and I would leave the house and go walk. My mom always recommended I'd get some space. So I'd go walk. We had 5 acres of land, and I'd just go walk in the fields. And, my brother, sometimes my mom would get home, and he'd be the only one in the house, and she'd say, "Where's your brother?" "Oh, he's out in the field." And she's like, "What did you do?"
Yeah.
That was kind of the normal thing. But yeah, so I think that to say that my that initial thing was just I cared about it. Later on, it became what I thought was righteous anger. I thought I was like, this person's a jerk. When I was in high school, I would often, I was trying to fight for Christian values, and people who were lying and doing drugs and drinking and having sex in high school, it was like they were the bad ones, and I and my friends were the good ones.
Crusader,
yeah. And it was moralist in a lot of ways. And I think I remember a situation where I wasn't necessarily angry. I was probably angry inside, but the way it manifests outside was making fun of somebody. There was a kid who was just kind of known to be kind of a bully and a jerk, and he had a really nice car, and he'd always drive up and push people out of parking spaces and rev his engine at them and just do all sorts of stuff like that. And he did something one of these times, and I think I walked away with my friends talking about him. And this girl that was there with us who was actually not following the Lord was like, "Man, you're really a jerk."
To you?
To me.
Okay.
And I was just like, and she said more than that, I'm sure, but it just hit me. I was like, man, I am kind of a jerk. I care a whole lot about the things I care about, but I don't treat people very well if they disagree with me. And so I had to come to grips with that. And I think my senior year, it was almost like I flipped the switch, and I was trying to be like everything to all people. I was trying to be, have everyone like me. And that probably went into a whole new realm of sin that I had to deal with later. Because then I became more of a people pleaser and looking to not make waves and not hurt people's feelings and not dishonor God even. I mean, some of it was probably from a good place. So
God saves you through the preaching of a faithful preacher in a small Baptist church in eastern New Mexico.
Yes.
Right? God saves you. And then you start a ride of God starting to change some of your desires and mature you. And some of those twists and turns were starting to desire not to be so angry anymore over years, right? And to handle that differently. From a moralist kind of crusader, I'm putting words in your mouth, become a moralist crusader sort of thing, into a people pleaser and trying to just come at it from a whole different angle.
absolutely.
How that continue to morph? Like if you were to describe, and today, I don't see you as either of those categories, strong, I am that. So God continue to work. Can you give any big picture just summary of maybe how God has continued to work in your life through those years as He continues to mature you?
I can try.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that story, I mean, for me, it was I experienced the grace of God in its most kind of basic form. And then I misunderstood it. And I misunderstood the mandate that came with it, and I acted accordingly, and I found correction, but I found correction from people. Okay. And that correction from people opened my eyes to other areas of sin, probably helped me fall into other areas of sin as well. But the time came when I was just made aware. It was I went from a place of thinking that my sin was like these acute instances or these acute things that I dealt with.
Pop up.
Yes, pop-up things. It was like a behavior. It was something that I struggled with, some individual thing that I struggled with.
Like a whack-a-mole.
And it was at some point I realized, no, this is the problem of sin is my nature. It's not just the act. It's actually that I, by nature, am a sinful human being, and I need the grace of God over everything. And it's not that I was so dirty I needed to be cleaned up. It was that I was so dead I needed to be brought back to life.
Yeah, that's different. Those
Very
two things
different.
are very different. Okay. So I'm assuming that was a realization that took place over time as well.
It was.
Yeah. So what difference does that make? Did it make in your life?
I mean, it made a huge difference. I think in some ways it made me try less. And there are all sorts of dangers with that. But it made me more confident, knowing, okay, this is God's story in my life. He is the one who is going to bring me to sanctification. And I think there have been probably times where I've gone too far on that. Like I was just kind of letting go and letting him
let go and let God.
Let go and let God. Yeah, I was just at one point I was very inactive in my walk with Him, just saying, well, it's God's grace. And I heard a guy, Terry Virgo, who's a preacher in the UK. One time he was talking through Romans, and he was talking about how your sin. He kind of compared it to, you look at it and you go, oh, there's this old lady who needs help crossing the street. And, Jesus helps me to be the kind of person who's going to help her walk across the street, rather than the type of person who's just going to walk away. And it's like, that's an incomplete analogy. And he's like, the truth is, it's like, it doesn't really matter whether you help the lady across the street or whether you elbow her out of the way and cross first, in terms of your salvation.
Yeah.
We're both, in either case, you're still completely in need of a Savior. I don't know, that really stuck with me. And it's not that we want to be the person who elbows the old lady out of the way. It's that there's no power, if it is your tendency to like elbow her out of the way, there's no power to overcome that outside of Jesus. There's no power to overcome that until you recognize the depravity of your sin and fall into His arms. At that point, power comes. And then at that point, you have the ability to deal with your sin in ways that you were never able to do before.
Okay, I think that brings up an interesting question. Because when God saved you, your theology was not completely formed. I mean, our theologies are currently being formed, right?
Yeah.
And will be for the rest of our life. But you could not have put into words then what you just did now.
No.
So do you remember what sense you did have? I remember you saying earlier that you knew you needed help, you were a sinner, and Jesus was the answer, so to speak. He's the one to turn to. Was it just that? Was that what you knew when God saved you and why you chose, or was it something different or more, or what was that?
That was it. I mean, I think the other part of it that is maybe less talked about or maybe even less thought about for me, it was the community that I was a part of.
Okay.
The people, if nothing else, I know there were people that judged me. I know there were people who probably didn't want me near their kids because I was a bad influence. But at the same time, the family that took me to the youth group, for instance, they loved me. I mean, they invited me on vacations. They had me over to their house all the time for dinner. They had me do all sorts of things with them because they were just trying to show me the love of Christ, even despite the fact they were probably at times like, I don't know if I like the influence of this kid on my son. Now, later on, that almost reversed, probably during my more legalistic years.
Okay, so this family is loving you. They are inviting you to many, many things to be with them, to show you the love of Christ. And what you're telling me is that is an element, that relationship is a factor in you turning to Jesus ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are things about their family that were not exemplary, and things that looking back, I'm like, oh, I'm glad that I didn't see that at the time. But they were diligent to show me the love of Christ and to help me, put me in positions to hear the gospel. And that was good, and it was kind, and I look back with fondness. In fact, I remember I went back to New Mexico one time and saw the father of this family. He was in his garage working. He was a mechanic, and I went over and just talked with him, and it was like talking to a father, like another father. And he was so happy to see me, and it was so great to see him. And he died a few years later. And so I really look on that time and just remember the influence of their love and their kindness to me, at a time where I didn't really deserve it. I mean, I still don't deserve it, but I think I could see where they weren't drawn to me necessarily because of who I was. They were drawn because of who Jesus is, and for this desire to share him with me.
And that's you in hindsight being able to put those pieces together.
Yeah.
Right. In the moment, you just knew it's a family who is inviting you to spend time with them.
Yeah.
And they are intentionally putting you in a place where you're going to hear the gospel over and over and over again.
Yep.
And God chose to use that to save you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I think that's powerful. It's everybody's story is different, but I think that's powerful. Even thinking about from God's perspective and what He's doing, bringing you to New Mexico, having that family there, all the moving that you've had, them intentionally taking you under their wings in a sense, putting you to where you be exposed to the gospel over and over again. And so it wasn't even through that family sharing the gospel with you. It was through this faithful preacher sharing the gospel over and over again, and that God chooses to use all of this, right, to save you. And then from there, to continue to mature you and show you more of who He is and change your heart over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and since then, I mean, community has been kind of a central feature of everything in my life. We moved, so later on, I met my wife, and then we re-met and got married and had kids and moved to Missouri. And we were, I had been a part of other youth groups in that time period before we got together, and then was a part of a college ministry early on that was really deep community, people that just loved each other and were all about the business of telling people about Jesus. And then later on, we moved to Southwest Missouri to be a part of a community that was like, it felt like family. The first time we were there, we felt just so welcome and invited in. And we experienced a depth of community there, probably deeper than anything I had felt before. We were there in that church for 14 years, and it was where we raised our kids. They were all, except for our oldest, were born there. And, we showed up to this church for the very first time, and, people were like welcoming us. And, the second time people are like grabbing our baby and like,
we go way back now.
Yes, it was awesome just to see. And we were still kids. We married very young, so we were still kids, and we were raised. It was like we had all these spiritual parents around us that were showing us how to live life in Christ and in community, and it was just a beautiful thing. So,
I'm curious, Justin. Fast forward all the way to today. God is still working on you and through you. And I'm curious, if you look back at this last season, whatever, just find that last season however you want, maybe it's a couple months, a couple years. Do you see God still working on you in ways similar to what we've been talking about? Does it feel different than before? How would you put words to what your relationship with God is like in this most recent season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I would describe it is I'm living in a period of just a rich, kind of multifaceted relationship with God, but it's not what I thought that would be. I think when I imagined a rich, multifaceted relationship with God, I imagined myself praying, just walking around praying out loud and like speaking the scriptures because I had the whole thing memorized and singing songs randomly of praise. And I don't think that's not, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's what my life looks like right now. But I think what I find is that God, I'm a participant in the story, and I'm more aware of that now than ever, that I'm a part of the story of what God's doing in the world, and He's created me for a purpose. He's created us for a purpose, and He has us walking out the life we're living with its ups and downs, and those ups and downs are sometimes traumatic. They're sometimes disorienting, and we kind of look at it as the moment to moment, but He's looking at the overarching arc of our lives, and it's a story that He's telling, and that we're living and a part of, and He's walking with us through it, even when we're not aware of that.
It goes back to you like finding the connections among and interconnected, or I don't remember how you just said it. All right, it sounds really similar to that. Like God is moving the story forward. You have a part of it, but it's all intentional. It's all a piece of what God is ultimately doing. If we don't understand all of it, it's all, and we're a piece of that. We get to be a piece of that.
Yeah,
invited into a relationship with a God who is sovereign over all of it.
Yeah,
Man. I think I know you a little bit, Justin, and I know that God has brought you and your family through a lot over the years, over the decades. And so you have been in relationship with a God who doesn't always just dole out things that feel good or are always just joyful, or what we might think when we say the word blessings, right? And yet, you're still a Christian today. You are still growing in your faith. That began all the way back at that church in Eastern New Mexico. I think this is my last question for you, Justin. I'm curious on how your view of God has shifted over the years. Do you have a sense of that, of how it's maybe become more fuller, or are there particular aspects of God that has grown as you think about who God is and your relationship with Him?
Yeah, I think the longer down the road I go, the more I am just humbled by who God is. And I don't mean that like, I don't know. I don't mean that to sound super spiritual. I think more than anything, it's like I'm more aware of how much bigger He is, how much more complex and yet simple, how much wisdom is contained in His mind and His heart, and in the ways that He deals with us. I think I'm progressively realizing the further down the road I go that He is, it's like He's got way bigger plans than what I know. And that's not about me. That's not about my life. It's not one of those, hey, I think He's got really big plans for me. Maybe He does. But just to get to a place of trusting that whatever the story is that He's telling, it's good. It really is good. And it doesn't always feel like it.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that from your story, Justin, that I think is really helpful for whoever's listening to this. I don't know if anybody's going to listen to this podcast, but whoever's listening to
All
this,
three of them.
Yeah. I think what a big piece that's helpful is that God used a family who just tried to love with you and put you in a position where you're exposed to the gospel. Out of God's sovereignty and wisdom, he chose to use a family in that way. And so maybe that's a way that some of us are feeling God wanting to use us in relationships that we have, not realizing the bigger picture of how God may be using that overall. And that the ministry of the local church, God can even use that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Justin, thanks. Thanks for taking the time and sharing some of your story. If you all know Justin, there's way more of the story like there is for everybody, and I'm going to volunteer Justin. If you'd love to know more, I'm sure he'd love to talk some more. So hope this is helpful. God is absolutely moving among us and has. I hope to bring some more of these stories to you in the future. Love you guys.